All right, hi, welcome. So this class is going to be kind of a recap on evolution, adaptation, and some natural selection concepts. It shouldn't take too long, so just stick with me. First thing I wanted to go over was how evolution works. You need four things for evolution. We kind of talked about this already. So first thing is you need some kind of change to occur. That change can be a mutation to your DNA, it can be a genetic change, or it could be an environmental change, like some kind of drought or global warming or something that's happening to your environment that is requiring a new way of living in it. As a result of this change, you're going to have natural selection. And this is kind of, you can think of it as filtering the change. So whichever animals are best adapted either due to their mutations or due to the luck of draw of how the environment has changed, whichever ones are going to survive will be naturally selected to pass on their traits. If this happens enough, eventually you'll have this process of adaptation, which is the results of filtering, the results of natural selection. And then if that goes on long enough, you can have speciation, where you'll have really long-term results of changes that have accumulated over time. So this is evolution in a nutshell. There's four steps to it: change, natural selection, the adaptation, the process of adaptation, and then speciation. Let's put this here. All right, so also, let's quickly review how random evolution is. So there are certain events that are part of evolution that are extremely random and left up to chance, and there are others that are very deliberate. So the mutation aspect, the change in your genetic DNA, is 100% random. Now, you could probably go stand next to a cell phone tower or park yourself in front of some radioactive decaying elements, but so you can increase your chances of being mutated, but you can't. You have very little control over what is actually being mutated on your code. Reproduction. So this is both random and not. So you don't account for if you're trying to choose a mate to pass down your traits. There may be some of those traits that are very visible, and you can choose you can make that decision based off of those, but you don't account for 100% of your partner's genotypes when choosing a mate. So you don't know if they're homozygous dominant or heterozygous for something. Some traits are totally invisible, and so those are left to chance. Genetic inheritance, this is random, but your options are limited. And what I mean by that is that once you are passing those traits down through your gametes, it is random what gamete gets what chromosomes, but there's a limited number of chromosomes it can choose from. So it's I would chalk that up to random. And then lastly, survival is not random at all. Survival is, there are chance accidents where something might happen, causing you to die, but for the most part, your survival is you're deliberately trying to live, and you're not just kind of flipping a coin each day to see if you make it to the next. But there are some things called Darwin Awards, so let's take a look at those. So Darwin Awards are given to people who make such boneheaded decisions that they should have their genes removed the gene pool. So here we have some nice people enjoying, a hot sunny day or whatever. They want to listen to some music, so they bring out some speakers, and they plug it into 120 volts, maybe 15 amps, 20 amps a circuit, and they're just barely floating this with some sandals. And if you keep following that cord, it goes over to this one, and it looks like they used this wood wedge maybe to make it float at one point, but they saw that was a mistake. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's bad here. Yeah, these people will be dead in a couple of minutes. This one's pretty self-explanatory. I love the look that he's giving them, like, oh, you're done, man. I'm going to get you now. Yeah, it's hot. It's hot. You got to take care of yourself. Maybe they don't have sunblock. That's a good one. What's he doing? What's he thinking? Oh, there it is. Okay. Uh, this one's pretty good. Let's just do a backflip into the street. Oh, there we go. I mean, so close, this is a good one. This is great. Can he do it? Can he get in there? No, he can't. No, he can't get in there. All right, let's watch that again. That's a good one. He's so stupid. Boom! All right, here we go. Another classic here. Why not? Look at this guy. He's having fun. Whoa! All right. So these are Darwin Awards. They go to people who probably aren't going to survive. All right. Natural selection, the filtering of the change. This is based off of three observations. First is that the offspring of all parents have slight genetic variations from their parents. This is due to sexual selection and the combining of gametes. So 50% DNA comes from mom, 50% comes from dad. And in those gametes, it's a kind of an independent assortment of the chromosomes of your grandparents. So there's some genetic variation between siblings and generation to generation. Also, there's environmental pressures. So the scarcity of food, water, and safety are all things that will create competition for resources. This is seen virtually at every walk of the animal kingdom, that you're going to be competing to stay alive. And then some individuals are better competitors because of what they inherited. And this is called fitness. Fitness in this case doesn't necessarily refer to physical fitness, like how in shape you are. It refers just to how well you fit into your niche. How well do you fit into the environment in which you need to survive? Some animals are just better because of what they inherited. And based off of those three observations, the organisms that inherit beneficial traits will, on average, survive and reproduce better. This process, occurring again and again and again, will lead to accumulated changes over time. So just to summarize natural selection one more time, there's going to be some genetic variation. There's going to be environmental pressures, which will result in competition. In that competition, the ones that have the best traits due to that genetic variation are going to survive, and then they'll be able to reproduce and pass on those traits to the next generation. All right, so, I should take a little moment here. One kind of cool thing that you can talk about is convergent evolution. This is when natural selection works to produce the same adaptations or adaptive traits in a similar environment across different species. So here we have a shark, a dolphin, and a cat, and one of these things is not like the other. And it turns out that the dolphin and the cat are actually much more closely related due to a common ancestor than the dolphin and the shark are. So these are both mammals, and so they share a common ancestor much sooner than the dolphin shares one with the shark. It's just that the same environment in which the shark and dolphin live have produced similar phenotypes because of the way that they've adapted to living in that environment. It's kind of a cool example. There's another one here about marsupials and mammals. So marsupials, which were geographically isolated in Australia, have evolved the same sort of adaptations that placental mammals did elsewhere. So the wolf, the mouse, the marsupial mouse, these are the wolf and the Tasmanian wolf. They look very similar despite being different, one being a mammal and one being a marsupial. This mouse and this marsupial mouse look similar, and then the flying phalanger and the flying squirrel are also looking very similar. Natural selection can also be kind of fall into two categories. It can be ecological or it can be sexual. So an ecological selection would be something like the ability to use a tool. Or a giraffe's long neck, allowing it to reach vegetation up high. What else would be there? Our brains are our ecological selection factor, but it can also be sexual, so just purely something that looks nice, like look, a peacock's beautiful plumage on its tail, or this dancing bird right here. I have a couple of these. This one's kind of cool. I mean, this bird is dabbing. So these birds of paradise do these amazing dances to win over a mate. And this is just one of them. This one's pretty cool too. I think that's terrifying. Hey, bonus points to anyone. Really, what's going on here? This is kind of cool. This is just he's dancing for her, right? He's trying to impress her with her moves, and that's like it's so similar to what you guys do in the 8th grade dance. Like you're just kind of trying to like do this rhythmic mating ritual, which is awesome. Like you guys are part of nature, just like this bird is. Anyone who does this dance at the 8th grade dance, I'll give you bonus points because it's such a cool dance. You got to hop around and have a big goofy smile on your face. If you can get some fluorescent coloring in there, then even more bonus points to you. That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about adaptation. Adaptation is the evolutionary process whereby a species becomes better able to live in its niche. I want to stress this word process here because a lot of people will confuse the adaptation as the actual product, like a giraffe's long neck is its adaptation, or a frog's ability to hibernate underwater is its adaptation. But I really want to stress that when we're talking about adaptation, we're talking about the actual very long process of going from one phenotype to another and adapting to your niche. And I want that's different from the actual product, which is kind of the end result. Adaptive traits, we'll call these products like a long neck, we'll call those adaptive traits. So they can be structural, like your shape, your armament, your body covering, your long neck. It can be behavioral, like the dancing birds, vocalizations, or it can be physiological, which would be something like making venom, slime production if you're a fish and you want to escape the jaws of some predator, or phototropism, which is when a plant kind of bends towards the light. So these are all just these are adaptive traits, and they got that way through the process of adaptation. These are some more. So these are adaptive traits of a bird. So the shape of this bird foot tells a lot about its behavior. So this would be a climbing foot. This would obviously be a swimming foot. Here we have a running foot. This is a perching foot, a grasping foot for a bird of prey, and then kind of a scratching foot with that long middle claw right there. One cool experiment that was done is they isolated these flies. So they had a couple of fruit flies, and they put them in different boxes and gave them different foods. So they have a starch food and a maltose food. Both of these are carbohydrates. It's just that maltose is a little bit easier to break down than starch. Starch would be a complex carbohydrate. So after many generations, the flies actually began changing color due to their diet. So these stayed kind of this amber brown looking color, or orangish brown, and these guys turned more yellow, I suppose. And then when they reintroduced them, the flies tended to want to stay with members that looked a lot like them. So in this case, 4 out of the 5 pairings were homogeneous, and then this one heterozygous pairing is where they decided to crossbreed. Had this experiment gone on long enough, it's possible that this breed would not have occurred, or if it did, it wouldn't result in a baby fly. So this is kind of the first step towards speciation. Speciation is the splitting of a species caused by geographic isolation or some other mechanism that gets them to split apart. So there's a couple different types of speciation. We're probably going to focus most on allopatric speciation, which is when you have some population and then there's a barrier that forms. And this is going to be your initial step to speciation. And due to that barrier and them not being able to cross mate, and due to that isolation, they'll begin forming different phenotypes. And if those phenotypes get big enough over time, then you'll get a different species. There are some other ones: peripatric, parapatric, and sympatric as well. Alright, so besides natural selection, there are other mechanisms that can influence this process of adaptation as well. There's genetic drift, which we'll do a quick activity on in a second, gene flow, artificial selection, the founder effect, and the bottleneck effect. For like a level 4 understanding, I'll have you guys research these and give an example of them. Genetic drift is kind of interesting. Genetic drift is changes to the frequency of an allele appearing in the gene pool totally due to chance. So let's say we have a population of some tan and green bugs, and then just by chance, randomly, 66% of the green bug population got squashed out by someone walking on it. Well, now, just by that pure accident, which is not a natural selection cause, now the general population is much more prevalent, or much more towards the tan allele. And that's kind of how that genetic drift can occur. It will drift towards some phenotype just purely by chance. So the big note here is that the tan bugs didn't survive because they were better adapted, so it's not natural selection, it was just purely luck that they survived. Okay, so I'm going to pause it here because this is where we'll start the actual activity. You can grab it up at the front or talk to me.